The lift of the Amanita Muscaria felt like going to a dance party. Like, it was still a physical lift, but I'm like, okay, I can hear the music. Amanita Regalis was literally like going to the gym.
Yeah.
It was a workout. Hello, Gabe.
Hi, Emily.
Welcome to the Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanical channel on YouTube.
It's such an honor to be here with you. Such an honor. And it's an honor to be here today to talk about what we're going to talk about. It's a somewhat nuanced subject, and we're happy to have you here to set the scene and help us unpack this for people.
If you guys want to get straight away to me and Gabe talking about Amanitas, this is the time code to check out. Feel free to fast forward here. We're going to yap for a second and have a yap sesh because we haven't seen each other in a while, but we're so happy you guys are here. Thank you for joining us for this excellent video, and a shout out to Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals. So today we're going to be talking a bit about Amanita Muscaria. We're going to be talking about Amanita Regalis. And then the third one is the biggest mystery to me, Amanita Pantherina. Y'all can tell watching this, I've never tried the Pantherina.
Some people refer to them as the Panthers. Oh. Yeah, they're called the Panthers because they're stealthy in terms of within their own habitat. The flat kind of like brown tannish cap in regards to its blending into its environment, and also they're stealthy in terms of their potency. They're very, very strong.
Do they sneak up on you? Because my experience with Regalis, I will tell everybody, stay tuned for the story. Do not leave this video until I tell my story. Those snuck up on me.
Yeah. I remember you messaging me. I think you messaged me, it was like the night of or the next day. And you were like, Gabe, you're like, this is for real right now. Like and what was interesting is that you're putting this certain emphasis on like the realness, the way, the powerful, the potency of the experience, right? And this is something that I've seen quite a bit within, interestingly enough, also the dissociative space. I think you and I have talked about this at some points, but there's like this strong sense of like importance sometimes. And like, I've also seen this come through with some of these higher dose Amanita experiences in general, but there is something about Regalis in particular that does seem to have this very kind of dissociative edge for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I only sat with one cap for the experience I had. So yeah, very potent.
Yeah.
You guys, we can't nail that in enough, that everything we're talking about today when it comes to the Regalis, and I'm also sure when it comes to the Pantherina, right?
Pantherina.
We're dealing with potency here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll also put the disclosure at the top of this.
The following video is made for the purpose of education and harm reduction. We are not promoting the use, procurement, or possession of any plant medicine or substance. We encourage everyone to do further research and prioritize safety.
Though it is legal, just like many other plant medicines and mushrooms, Amanita Muscaria poses a risk of toxicity if not properly prepared or taken in appropriate doses. This video does not promote any specific dose or frequency and urges all sitting with it to exercise moderation.
Side note, Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals offers a varied selection of not just some of the stuff we'll be talking about today, but kava, kanna, blue lotus tea, California poppy, all of the most incredible ethnobotanicals available to legally purchase on the internet. Please be sure to use my code, Keep It Trippy, for 10% off. Thank you, Gabe. Be sure to use my code, Keep It Trippy, and you can use it across orders. You can use it multiple times. You can use it for more than one item. So everybody, thank you so much for keeping my channel afloat. And you can find my channel. It is Chrysanthellus, just my name, on YouTube. Shout out to all of my subscribers and Patreon subs. Big love to you guys. You can also get with the realm on Instagram and TikTok at Chrysanthellus. Yes. And there's going to be a new Minnesota Nice video coming out soon, which is going to be my lovely kava video. I do 3 different recipes with the Minnesota Nice Ethno Kava. And let me tell you, the second one is one of the most delicious drinks I've made in my entire life.
I can't wait to see it. What did you think about the kava?
I loved it. I love the kava. I feel like I'm such I feel like I give one note when I review these products, but I'm so genuinely enthusiastic about them, and I loved the kava. I haven't reviewed anything on my channel that I haven't loved or have been like with the Amanita Muscaria. just absolutely changed by in the best way possible. So
amazing. I love that. It makes it that much, it makes it like a lot easier and like more authentic, because you want to be able to make the same quality of video and endorse it with the same amount of like energy and authenticity if it actually wasn't a good product. And what's really cool is like that these things are all accessible to people. No one's gonna get fucking arrested. People can get it shipped right to their doorstep. I've always loved kava as well too. I don't take it as much as Amanita or Blue Lotus or Kana, but I will take kava every now and then. My like initial experimentation with it when I was a bit younger, I found some enjoyable experiences with it, but it was honestly this kind of like back and forth. It was really hit or miss for me, it felt like. And oftentimes I had to consume this just like a generally large amount of plant matter that didn't sit super well every time. And, I tried the micronized, I tried doing the steeping and everything like that myself. And like, I liked kava, but of course, whenever I came on the company and stuff, I went through this long period of trying all the products and things like that. And the kava extract ended up being it ended up being one of my favorite products. And I was talking to Christian about all this stuff, and not that it's perfect. There's going to be some people who prefer the sort of, fresh kava root itself. They want to powderize it themselves sometimes. And you know what I mean? And that's great. I think people should have that. I've even done a bit of that. But the kava extract, especially since we live over here in the States, and like all this has to be imported and stuff, it seems to both simultaneously somewhat like homogenize the kind of like potency and alkaloid profile and also preserve it a little bit better. So it has a little bit more reliable kind of potency. That's generally what I found from our kava extract over like doing the kind of like teas and stuff with all the different types of powders. And yeah,
and I'll hop on the party train and just say, I also love this extract. My favorite thing about all of the Minnesota Nice ethnobotanical products, for the most part, that I've been reviewing is the capsules. It comes in pre-measured capsules, so y'all at home do not have to worry about, how much, let me get out my scale, It can take so much time when you just want to drink a cup of tea. So I recommend the capsules. I love the capsules, and I love that it's a pre-measured dose. You don't have to do any of that work on your end.
Yeah. And so you can, like you just said, some people really love the convenience, ease of use of the capsules, the fact that it's already weighed out. But we also offer the bulk extract too as well, if someone's trying to get like the best bang for their buck. And this might be somewhat of an unpopular opinion. I haven't pulled a whole lot of data on this, mainly just like talking to people within the close circle, Christian and other people within the business. But I think that the Amanita, Blue Lotus, and kava extracts that we have all by themselves actually taste good. Like the actual extract, like the Amanita has this kind of slightly tart mushroomy flavor, and it's because we essentially make a decarb tea, boil it down. It's a bit of an oversimplification, but it's a very simple extract that we do with that. It ends up being this kind of just lemony, mushroomy kind of tart flavor. Then like the Blue Lotus has this almost kind of like, I can see why more people wouldn't like the Blue Lotus extract, but I like it because it has this kind of slightly bitter, nutty, like deeply floral taste to it. And I like that because I like tasting these things. It sounds weird, but I like tasting the compounds. I like tasting
No, you have to taste them to know them. Yeah.
And then the kava extract weirdly tastes kind of good by itself too.
And then before we talk about Amanitas, I will say, if you have to get a gift for your mom from the Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals website, get her the Blue Lotus tea bags. That is my mom's favorite tea in the world. Shout out to Christina. I love you so much. And I literally purchased those on the site and I mail them to my mom because they are her favorite.
Mm-hmm. There's something about Lotus. I think almost everybody, especially when we give them the right dose, feels and loves the Blue Lotus products. Mm-hmm. But there's something about, and I've noticed this from like just actually observing sales, the breaking down demographics, the analytically, and then also like working in-person events and things like that, communicating with the customer base. It does seem like women gravitate towards the Lotus, and I love that. And it kind of makes sense. It has this very empathogenic like nature to it, But you said Blue Lotus tea bags, great gift for mothers,
especially if you can't go to sleep at night. It's women. We're the ones being kept up. So a lot going on for women. Shout out to all the women. But yes, it helps with sleep. I should mention that.
Another great gift that women would love, you can buy one of our, say, 25 gram or 50-gram bags of Blue Lotus flower for relatively cheap from our store. And then what you do is you take this Blue Lotus flower, you put it into a mason jar, pour wine over the top of it, let it sit for at least an hour, but sometimes people let it sit for several days, if not weeks or months. You can just but it takes about an hour for the alkaloids to extract into the alcohol, and then all you have to do is strain the lotuses out from there, and you have Blue Lotus infused wine. And
That's incredible.
I just put out a recipe video on our YouTube channel, on our Instagram, and stuff like that as well too. It's a really quick recipe, really easy to do, and I show you like a proper dosage for it as well too. Here's how much to put into the bottle of wine, kind of like ratios, and here's how much each person because the thing with Blue Lotus too is like some people truly can like at a very low dose get to feel it and harmonize with it and love it, and then some people are going to be completely put off by it because of the dosage aspect, because they're not going to feel it at all at the low dose. Some people really do require a much larger threshold dose of the Blue Lotus, but we found like pretty reliably when you, even grown-ass men, heavy grown-ass men, when you give them enough of the extract or like enough of this wine, they get it, they feel it. So yeah, Blue Lotus wine, great gift as well too. It's like a unique kind of like custom,
It's a mod.
That's right.
It's modding out your wine.
That's right. Yeah.
We'll be talking about Amanita Muscaria and Amanita Regalis primarily, and we'll get a little bit into Amanita Pantherina as well. Gabe has probably the most to say about that because I don't have any direct lived experience with it yet. But let's get into the red caps. Amanita Muscaria, potent and beautiful traditional indigenous Siberian medicine, which if you guys are coming here from my channel, you might have seen my video on it. Gabe, what can you tell us? Just like simple things to start off, like how this affects the GABA receptors, the difference between this and other mushrooms that people talk about on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, Amanita, this is our main shtick that we give people, but it's very important and it's very relevant. It's probably the world's most iconic yet simultaneously misunderstood mushroom. It appears in all sorts of folklore and culture and tales. It's the Santa Claus mushroom, it's the Mario mushroom, it's the Alice in Wonderland mushroom. This mushroom at times has had a couple of different false associations with it for people. It's typically either that it is hallucinogenic psychedelic in the traditional sort of serotonergic psychedelic sense. That's not completely correct. And then people also believe sometimes that it's a toxic mushroom or poisonous, that you should not touch it. That is just
completely lethal, which is definitely what I grew up learning. Oh, that's not a mushroom that anybody would ever take or that anybody would ever eat, is something that I would hear growing up.
Right. And that's really not correct. It's very much an oversimplification and misrepresentation of the mushroom. And it's really interesting to see because it's not just in your average bear who has this association of Amanita like that in their head. They're even people within the psychedelic or spiritual space also have this this weird programming that has persisted, and so that's part of the ethos of the company, is breaking through that, you know what I'm saying, for people and helping them. Honestly, the mushroom sells itself too. I can give you all this information, but once you try it for yourself, it clicks for people, but yeah, Amanita, it is compared to something like psilocybin mushrooms, it's a completely different mushroom acting on completely different receptor sites in your brain with a completely different sort of alkaloid profile to it. It has three main sort of primary constituents in terms of alkaloid composition that are thought to be kind of, primary drivers of the experience. With that being said, it has a very long chemical profile that we're still kind of figuring out and piecing together and finding new things out about. But these three primary alkaloids are muscimol, hypotenic acid, and muscarine. Muscimol has very interesting activity at your GABA receptors, and it produces this sedating, sometimes euphoric, jolly, sleep-enhancing, dream-enhancing type of effects. Ibotenic acid is more glutaminergic, and at lower doses it can be somewhat energizing or stimulating and help you focus. At larger doses it can be nauseating. It can be typically pretty dissociative actually at larger doses.
Yeah.
Muscarine has this interesting activity at our muscarinic acetylcholine receptors, which any sort of nootropic that you buy out there on the market, almost any nootropic that you buy, especially nootropic formulas, that's primarily what they're targeting and trying to go after is these acetylcholine receptors. It helps with, things like memory recall, verbal fluency, it has the potential to make you smarter, right? So Amanita also seems to have this interesting sort of nootropic-like qualities to it in combination with the sedating and dissociative / stimulating. It's this really interesting sort of shotgun receptor site sort of natural formula that nature gave us within a mushroom. And in terms of effects for people at lower doses, it seems to be really good for sleep, really good for anxiety. At medium doses, it has more of this interesting kind of spiritual Xanax, drunken, jolly, slightly dissociative feel to it, and it's hard to put into words. It gets harder to put into words the higher of a dose you go into, but like at these medium doses, it can have this very pronounced altered state of consciousness that can be described as sometimes deliriating, dissociative, that could be insightful and confusing sometimes for people. It depends a lot on the matrix that you put around it, just like other medicines, and at really high doses, it tends to put people to sleep, tend to go have very vivid dreams. There's a lot of sort of quote unquote spiritual or mystical aspects to the higher doses, but they are something that needs to be approached with caution and thought, of course, but that's kind of like the quick basic rundown on Amanita Muscaria. Was there anything that you think I was missing there, Emily?
No, I think that's totally it. I think maybe defining dosage might be helpful for people, because for me, when I've given this to my friends, I'm like, look, just start off with half a cap and then work your way up to 1 cap, then work your way up to cap and a half. Some people aren't going to feel it until 2 caps, but you don't know if you're a half cap type of girly. You never know which one you're going to be.
That's right. So always start small and work your way up with it. We tell people, okay, it's off the top of my head, the microdose range that we tell people for Amanita Muscaria is 0.2 to 2 grams, right? It's like there's a bit of variance in there. That's like a bit of a wide range. Whereas with psilocybin microdosing, a lot of times they'll tell you like a 1/4 gram to a 1/2 gram, a gram, but like Amanita is a quarter, like 0.2 to about 2 grams for a microdosing range. And that's because, like you said, it does vary for people quite a bit.
So, yeah.
Right. And then we say usually it's 2 to 5, 2 to 7 is the more kind of like medium dose, 5 to 10, 5 to 15, it gets 7 to 10, 7 to 15. Those are like higher doses. And then usually it's about like 15 plus would be considered heroic.
I don't know where y'all even find the time to eating 15 caps in one sitting.
Oh, it's
is
a
what
lot.
You're referring to.
It can be a lot. Usually in the way that I've done a lot of times people, when they do heroic doses, they'll do a tea.
Okay. That makes more sense, because I'm just picturing myself eating 15 back-to-back caps. Oh, I would blast off.
Right. Well, I have taken 15 plus grams before of it, just actually raw, just like eating and munching on the mushroom.
I'm sure you have, yeah.
And
you have to be able to tell people about.
Well, right. If you're going to try and sell it and do, and also I genuinely find these things interesting and tend to go down some of these rabbit holes sometimes with medicines and really want to understand and know them intimately, and especially Amanita. It's this felt like kind of like this calling, but yeah, like this 15 plus gram range is, like I said, some people typically people get to this range using the teas and they'll decarb them. And this is another interesting aspect of Amanita, is that you can somewhat tailor your experience and customize it. These alkaloids that I was mentioning earlier, ibotenic acid, sometimes for some people, ibotenic acid in too large of doses can have unwanted side effects, especially if you jump into it really fast and take a large dose right off the rip and don't really have a lot of experience and or tolerance really built up to these compounds. Then taking a large dose of ibotenic for your first experience can make you nauseous.
Yeah, it can be a tummy no.
Yeah. And it can cause like muscle spasms and things like that. And so you can do what's called a decarb. You can decarboxylate your amanitas. And this is essentially the process, like this enzymatic process of turning that alkaloid ibotenic acid into muscimol, into more muscimol, so more of the sedating compound. And so usually people who take the heroic doses end up going this pathway of decarbing it so that there's less ibotenic and more muscimol, which leads to a sleepier, kind of more sedating experience. If you don't decarb it and you take a heroic dose, of course, work your way up to that. But if you don't decarb it and you take a heroic dose, it's usually a much more dissociative type of experience. Of course, it's still very sleepy and, and stuff, but it's got this dissociative edge to it that is very visceral.
Yeah, I'll share some of my experience with trying it for the first time.
Amazing.
With you. So listen, y'all know I'm very skeptical about any fungus related product. I have never, and may probably with any other people outside of this crew, will never accept fungus in the mail. Okay. This is the first time I accepted dry fungus in the mail. I trusted these folks. I took the dried fungus, but I was working with Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals on collaborations for months before you guys even sent me some, and I became open to it. And I'm really glad that I did. I'm really glad that I gave the experience a chance. So my first time, I think I tried just half a cap. I think I did that on camera. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I loved it. It was great. I felt great. The main effects of that were just like an uplift in my mood and almost like antidepressant effects that you would get from like a typical antidepressant on a lower dose. Yeah. I definitely felt happier. I felt giddy. I felt like dancing. And funny enough, I quit drinking when I was like 24. Now I only drink like on special occasions, maybe like once a year or something like that. But I always drank and did karaoke, and it helped me sing. And I could never get back to that place of being able to sing without the help of something. And I feel like the more I've been sitting with Amanita Muscaria, it has helped me sing. When I take it, I sing, I dance. It's like very expressive for me. It's very fun. When I'm working my way up to like a cap and a half, I am able to work. I'm able to video edit, do what I need to get done, but also I'm able to take a break. I'm able to dance. I'm able to sing. The first big sort of like reality glitching that I noticed sitting with the red caps was, I believe, 2 caps. It was between a cap and a half to 2 caps. I was editing video on my laptop and I started getting like auditory glitches, like auditory distortions. So like I would be editing something, the sound would be playing back to me and I'd get a little DJ, like, you know, when the DJ like a little record scratch, insert the sound here. I kind of got that, but it was like a play between time. It felt like time was also doing that. That was the first sort of distortion that I had with the red caps. And then with Regalis, I had a very similar situation, but instead of with sound, it was strictly with time. It was just like glitches in my perception of time, but with the similar like DJ scratches of like time going forward really fast, going back really fast, going forward really fast for just half a second, a little bit.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. I remember hearing about, watching your video and then also talking to you about your experience, and like you just describing this observation that you made of, at one point in your life, alcohol, this certain GABAergic substance, seemed to lend itself to this particular activity for you. And I think a lot of people fall into this with drugs in general, but there is something, I think, within the GABAergic headspace, right? Alcohol and like benzodiazepines for people, where if we're being, of course, most of the time, and it's not very healthy, saying that, especially the abuse of these things, but there is something within there that people find value in. And there is a certain trade-off that people end up making that at one point feels like maybe it's worth it. But usually at a certain point for people, the trade-off ends up not being worth it, right? And there's like physiological reasons for why there's this, trade-off. But like Amanita truly does seem, there's a lot of products and a lot of different herbal things that have been marketed before in the past and have been passed off as a potential alcohol alternative. Yeah. Even like cannabis seltzers and things like that, which to me, it's not an alcohol alternative. It's a completely different spirit, you know what I mean? But Amanita does feel like nature's, like Xanax, like nature's sort of alcohol. It is a true alcohol alternative.
Without a hangover or a lot of the negative more
Yeah.
negative or dangerous side effects of it.
Absolutely. I think you can even abuse Amanita, right? But you could sit there and take 60 grams a day, but we found, and there's a lot of research being done around this. This is part something that we're dumping a lot of money into, but we're kind of like compiling anecdotal research in combination with this. But Amanita does seem to be pretty anti-addictive across the board. It's a very obscure thing if somebody consistently takes large doses of
Because of
Amanita, or
tolerance.
tolerance is a big aspect of it. Tolerance is an aspect of it, but tolerance seems to work kind of weird with Amanita. For some people, they report periods of what feels like reverse tolerance. For some people, they report what seems like a somewhat classic tolerance that is
Yeah.
usually pretty minimal, if average at most. It doesn't seem to have a sharp tolerance increase for people a lot of times. But then also there's this interesting phenomena, and a lot of people will second this, where you can take Amanita every day for 3 weeks and then quit. And physiologically speaking, at least it feels like there's like almost no withdrawals. You know what I mean? And we never want to mislead people with any sort. There's never a neurological free lunch, right? There's always sort of rebalancing and things that downstream effects, things that do happen. But this is what people report is a very minimal, if complete, absence of like sort of physical dependence with Amanita, which is a really interesting thing, that it both simultaneously provides this actual like experientially, like you can feel it, and you can feel it going to work, and you can feel its magic. But like you said, you're not hungover the next day, or you're not like rolling around sleepless the next night, like
Yeah.
like
Yeah, and for any of
yeah.
our viewers watching this who want to put their foot to the pedal right now, that's not a recommendation to do that for 3 weeks. That's not what we're saying. We're speaking about hypothetically, or people who have done that have specifically reported that. So put your foot on the brake before you go on that 3 week silent meditation retreat with your giant pack of Amanita. That is not what we are saying here. I know it's one guy out in Connecticut. I'm talking directly to experience this medicine in moderation first.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and and an interesting thing that we've recommend to a lot of people, especially people who are actually trying to utilize it as a tool for coming off of alcohol or benzodiazepines, we will recommend like a 2 or 3 week regimen where you interact with it in sort of more microdoses throughout the day, like every day. And that seems to have interesting effects on people, kind of like this compounding nature over time. And you always have to ask the question with that sort of thing, like how much of that is a sugar pill effect, where we're just giving you the matrix to make positive change in the first place. But then I think a lot of it is that. But then when you mix in this interesting sort of pharmacological action in with that, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah. It gets
Yeah.
spicy.
Yeah. Right. So, switching over now from red caps to some brown caps, Gabe, what can you tell us about Amanita Regalis, which is also an Amanita that I have sat with?
Yeah, yeah. So Amanita Regalis, it's actually really interesting because Amanita Regalis, that word regalis, translates into royal.
Yeah.
So it really means like Amanita Royal. It's sort of
Yeah.
like some people regard it as like the king or the queen of the Amanita family in terms of like experientially, even though
Yeah.
Pantherinas might be a little bit more potent, a lot of people experientially do prefer Regalis. And it's interesting because I've been interacting now with Amanitas for a good couple years of heavy experimentation and dealing with it in the business and stuff. And I myself have fallen into a place. So I think Regalis might be my favorite, especially if I'm going from.
Ooh, hot
Mhm.
take.
Well, they all have their own different use cases. I think Regalis for larger dose is my favorite. I think Muscaria for a functional daytime dose, like nootropic, is my favorite still.
Yeah.
But yeah, Regalis. So Regalis is a variation. It contains very similar alkaloid profile, and it does look like muscimol and ibotenic are similar to Amanita, the kind of driving factors of the experience and of the pharmacological action. But just like Amanita Muscaria, has a very long chemical profile that we're still figuring out. Anecdotally, people claim that it seems to be somewhere around 2 to 3 times as potent as Muscaria, and some of the
I could see that.
Yeah, and some of the
Or
research.
5 or 6.
Right. And it's so hard to say exactly because they affect everybody differently. And the actual like alkaloid composition of these caps and of the stems is going to vary from species to species of Amanita, but also from like location to location. There was an interesting study done, and it was in like 2014, where they were looking at Amanita Muscaria, and they showed that the overall alkaloid composition of the mushroom, more so the stem than the caps, but the overall alkaloid composition of the mushroom had some very interesting correlation to like the composition of the soil that it came out of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like the biodynamics, and if you're a spiritual person, the energetics of the land seem to be having an effect on the mushroom, which is something that people, I think, can, if you're somebody who likes cannabis, it's very similar to, a lot of people focus on like the genotype in this certain strain, but most of it comes down to like really like the phenotype, like how is it being grown and where is it being grown, and is it being grown with love, and that sort of thing. And I think Amanitas are very similar. But yeah, Regalis, they have a brownish sort of tan cap to them, different than the red cap Muscarias. Like I said, they're significantly more potent. Anecdotally, a lot of people claim, and I will second this, they seem to be, at least at larger doses, a bit more like dissociative, seem to pack a little bit more of a punch to them. But yeah, they're a rarer mushroom than the Muscarias. And so like on the store, they're a little bit more expensive. There's more of a limited sort of harvest of them. And what's interesting is Pantherina is this way in particular. I don't know if Regalis kind of follows the same timeline. I haven't seen Regalis follow the same timeline in the time that I've been with the business for the past couple of years, but Pantherina falls within this cycle of 1 year. There'll be like really bountiful, heavy harvests. And then the next year it'll be kind of like skim and it's pickings. And then the next year it'll be bountiful. And Christian said that Pantherina, he's noticed, has kind of fallen within this cycle over the past 4 or 5 years. Yeah, so
That's like my mom's blueberries.
I
Year to
love
year.
that.
Very
Nature just kind of controls it for you, you know? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if I were to get like super like cuckoo woo woo about it, I would be like, what if that's just the medicine's way of taking a temperature check and realizing that they're not so called for? Do you know what I mean? Like
hmm
the woo side of my mind would be like, what type of autonomy do the mushrooms have in deciding to not pop up?
Right. Well, then another, in the same vein, another trippy aspect to the whole sort of seasonality of Amanita. Amanitas have, it's usually like kind of early fall time. There's like this rich upcropping of them called Amanita season, and that's when most of the Amanitas are harvested and they come up for the year and stuff like that. But it looks like throughout the year, the potency, especially for the first like 3 to 6 months, if stored correctly, the potency remains very relatively stable, especially if you make like an extract or something like that out of it, like we do with a lot of our product. But like the mushroom itself, when stored properly, the potency of it for 3 to 6 months is relatively stable. At the 6 month mark, it starts to go down a little bit more and more. And then it's like right at the 1 year mark, even when stored correctly, there's this much sharper decrease in the potency of the raw mushroom itself, which is almost like nature giving you a new kind of like harvest right as soon as the old harvest starts to kind of completely lose its potency. It's like nature's little cycle.
Can I share my experience with trying the Amanita Regalis?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So this is actually a very funny story. And it's one that I was a bit too worried to share on my channel, but I really, really wanted to share it. So everybody from my channel, I'm really glad you're here. I did not realize how different these were. I did a whole video about it. I spoke to you guys about them being different. I understood like the face value about why they were different. I didn't understand how different they were to the Amanita Muscaria in the effects, when they hit, etc., etc. I took notes because I'm like, this is going to be a video. So I took notes for you where my handwriting looks absolutely insane. Let me get rid of the bag. My handwriting never looks like this. This is what I was like, it was a mania. I was writing this. And so this is really funny. I took a cap of Amanita Regalis on a Saturday afternoon, maybe around 1 or so. I took a nap I watched an entire film. I watched Blink twice. I got up. I made an appointment to the nail salon. And I was just like, this mushroom ain't hitting. That's fine. Everybody has their, their own tolerance, their own potency, their own experience of these things. And I'm just like, maybe I need a little bit more. Did not take a little bit more because I know there's always a chance for something. So it's 7 p.m. I took these mushrooms at 1 or 2 p.m. It's 7 p.m. I'm getting my nails done.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, in my neighborhood, I'm not driving, or it's just a walk away from me. And all of a sudden, I see planar dissonance. I see like the planes glitching out. When I say the planes, I'm talking about two-dimensional space, almost like a fuzzy static, but not like a black and white static. And I just start seeing glitches in my field, not like rectangular, but like planar, like an entire plane. And time starts glitching a little bit. And I'm like, my nails are finishing up. And I'm just like, oh, it's coming. It's coming. I did not realize that sometimes we're on somebody else's time. We're on a different, something else's time. I was not on my own time. Fortunately, the glitches were enough for me to get myself together, remember to tip, leave, make it back home safely to my bed. And that's when reality just completely exploded for me, when I started taking notes. If you're ever in such a state of mind that you're like, ooh, I need to remember this, I need to start taking notes, take the notes, even if it seems goofy, because sometimes you don't remember after, and sometimes the notes help you remember. So I'm going to read the notes that I experienced this night. It's probably 8 or 9 p.m., 8 hours after I took these mushrooms.
I'm so excited to hear this.
I'm like mentally crashing out. First thing I said is I felt like a different person. I'm just like completely, what is going on? Who is this? Whose room am I in? Not literally like I knew, but I felt like in my body completely different. I wrote that I felt the car wash. I felt the car wash of Amanita Muscaria, but this was car wash premium. Like I was in the premium car wash. And then, the day after, you feel like a squeaky clean new car, but I could feel the turbulence of the car wash, all the different soaps, the light, and like I was in the car wash. I started to remember dreams and nightmares. They just started coming back to me, just like dreams that I've had in the past, nightmares that I've had in the past. They've started coming back to me, especially more recent ones that I've definitely forgot about. It made me sleepy. Like I said, in 2 hours, I took a full nap before these hit. I tried to watch a show. I literally tried to watch a show. I could not watch a show. I was like in it. I had to put my iPad away. And then I started to get sleepy while I'm taking these notes post nail salon, but I couldn't go to sleep. And I said lightness came later after this. I felt very light. The biggest thing that I felt was, did you watch Severance on Apple TV?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
For everybody who watches Severance, it's two different personas, two complete. Do you know the premise of it?
No.
Oh, okay. It's a show where there's like your work self and your home self, and you get a surgery to sever those two personas in your mind. So when you start the day as your home self, you walk to work, you get in this elevator, and as you're going down the elevator, the severance process clicks in. You are transformed into a different persona of yourself who can't remember or doesn't know anything else. I just literally felt like I was stuck in the elevator, and I was like constantly glitching between person A to person B. And like one of the versions of myself that I was glitching in is like all of the ways that I am deeply unhealed and that I deeply need work, and that it's that moment where I say like the fingers point to you and you're like, you are the villain. Do you know what I mean? And I think every medicine is like, when I have that moment, I'm like, it's a success, because I cannot be reminded of that enough. And then the other side of myself was the side of betterment, the side of healing, the side of like hope. And it wasn't like the dichotomy of positive and negative, but I was switching between these two different versions of myself. And I said at first, glitching in and out of reality, I was trying really hard to focus on the presence. And then I was just kind of like, fuck it. Why am I trying to do that? You know what I mean? I should just go where this takes me. Like I was trying to grasp on to the present moment. Do you know what I mean? Like for my dear life.
And you even saw through in that moment, you even saw through that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also like I have a heavy meditation practice, and like sometimes I go to a really dope Zen Buddhist temple out here in New York City, and like a lot of the like mindfulness Buddhist sort of like all of that practice is a lot of the times grounding yourself in the present moment. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's so focused on the present. But in that situation, it was like time was opening up, and it was just like portals to all of these different experiences that I wouldn't call the present. And I couldn't tell you what they were.
Would you say
Anyways,
archaic, maybe, in a way? Archaic is a way. Sometimes, we say that there's like spirits with these things, there's realms, and I think there's a spectrum to that. But for instance, like the DMT realm, it does kind of feel like there's a lot of commonalities and people visiting somewhat similar places, and there being somewhat of overall kind of like spirit and vibe to the place, and the people that I've talked to, and it's kind of like rare, and it's starting to be more and more now that we're getting it out there, but it's very few people who've been to the high dose Amanita realms. But like the people that I've talked to about that, it feels similar, as if we've both done ayahuasca or something. Oh, like you've seen it too, like you felt it too. There's something in there that's like we're trying to articulate together right now, but it's so hard to. And you said like you felt like a different person. I think calling this dissociation, right, is a bit of an oversimplification of it, but that's definitely sort of like where my mind went to a bit, was like like I was describing earlier, like there's this heavy dissociative kind of edge to it. And it was interesting that you said I felt like a different person, and this switching between people, and something that you kind of, I found it interesting that you fell back into one of your kind of like grounding principles as a human being with sitting with yourself in meditation, right? Because something that I've been practicing since I was 17 years old is meditation, but in particular this certain type of visual meditation where I visualize myself physically in like my environment. And I've fallen out of this at times in my life, but over the past few years I've stuck to this just about every day, and like I look and visualize myself. And I'm kind of reserved about who I tell this to, but I'm happy to share this with you right now, and it feels so right. Like, Emily, this thing that I do where I look at myself, and I can do it sober, right? And it's gotten stronger over the years the more that I've done it and stuck to it. But being on fucking Amanita, and sometimes other medicines too, serotonergics have definitely lended itself to this, especially LSD. But anyways, Amanita has had some really interesting effects within these kind of like core practices that I've established as a person. But I would say this visualization thing of mine is my own like weird, like little that I've really stuck to and really kind of strengthened over a long period of time. And Amanita really amplifies it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was not, I would say the red caps are fuzzy, cozy. They do have a little bit of that static to me, but it's like a comfy cradling static. The static and the glitching, the temporal glitching that I experienced with Amanita Regalis, literally not cozy, literally not comfortable, literally, it was giving shadow work. And I think that it's just as important to talk about the medicines and the ethnobotanicals that lend themselves to more shadowy experiences and aren't just like something enjoyable to gather around with the friends and tune into some fleet foxes. Like, both are warranted, both sides are needed, but there's definitely dialogue that's missing around Regalis, I think.
Yeah. And this is something that I'm glad that you say this, and I can't emphasize that enough as well too, that there is a shadowy aspect to these medicines, and that's why they need to be approached thoughtfully and like ease your way into it. And that is kind of like I was describing earlier on in the conversation, that is a big part of the misconception that people have with it, of it being hallucinogenic or psychedelic. And there is definitely, like all medicines, but there is shadowy aspects to psilocybin. The misconception that a lot of people have, I was describing this a little bit earlier on in the conversation, but a big misconception that people have with Amanita is this idea that it's earlier on in the conversation, I was describing this sort of misconception that people have about Amanita and it being hallucinogenic or psychedelic. And that's something that over time we've learned, that kind of like you said a minute ago, we need to emphasize to people that psilocybin can have shadowy aspects to it, like all medicines can. There could be this spectrum, but that kind of serotonergic headspace is different.
Yeah.
And there is something about the Amanita headspace that I think lends itself sometimes, especially higher doses, to a little bit maybe more shadow work or shadow work in a different way. Sometimes it can be potentially less intense or more intense for people. It depends.
Yeah, the lift of the Amanita Muscaria felt like going to a dance party. Like it was still a physical lift, but I'm like, okay, I can hear the music. Amanita Regalis was literally like going to the gym.
Yeah.
It was a workout.
Yeah, I've had some experiences with it as well too that are definitely like you just described. It was like once it set in, I was actually like in it. It was like, okay, no, this is not an enjoyable afternoon. No, this is I'm scared in the bathroom for a little while. I'm like got a weird level of like low self-esteem for a
Yeah.
bit.
I didn't tell anybody I was taking this cat because I didn't think it would come to this. I don't have an emergency contact on the waiting for me.
Right. Yeah, in these well in so you're telling this story. I found it really interesting that it seemed to take 5 or so hours
Oh,
for
it
it to
took
really start to
so long. It didn't make sense.
yeah. And so I wonder, did you have anything to eat beforehand? Did you like yeah, I
Yeah,
forget.
I don't think I did it on an empty stomach. I believe I had
Mhm.
breakfast. I might
Yeah.
even have had food to eat after I took it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Cuz
also, I want to say, for as challenging as an experience, as much of a workout as that was, I felt incredible for a week or two after. I was just in the afterglow of the car wash. Like, literally
yeah.
felt like my mind and psyche went through a premium car wash.
And so with like serotonergic psychedelics and ketamine, there's a lot of talk within like the medical field of it and the scientific, like all the things. A lot of people talk about the sort of neuroplastic effects and potentials of things like ketamine and serotonergic psychedelics. This hasn't been something scientifically shown with Amanita, but due to its sort of like glutaminergic receptor site activity and the way that people report on a lot of their large dose and small dose experiences with it, kind of like I was describing to you earlier, this kind of like lower dose regimen for people can seems to have somewhat of this like interesting effects over a long period of time. And myself, I've personally experienced what you just described after a large dose experience, and I've heard plenty of other people describe the same thing as well too, of this kind of like afterglow type of feel, which I think can have both spiritual and materialistic like explanations and qualities to it. But yeah, that's yeah, these car wash experience into the afterglow, a kind of dissociative edge throughout it. And then also the thing that's really nice about Amanita is that you as you're going through this experience, there's somewhat of this kind of built-in recovery slash integration period on the tail end where typically people go to sleep. They have
Yeah.
very vivid dreams. Did you have really vivid dreams this night, or have you had like that experience with Amanita yet?
I didn't have it with the Regalis. I don't believe that I remembered my dreams.
Yeah.
But the sleep, like going to sleep after, was like the fans blowing at the end of the car wash. Like I felt definitely like I was going through a portal of return to the outside world. And I believe with Amanita Muscaria, I've had more dreamy stuff. Yeah.
Mm.
How about you?
Yeah, the kind of like I was saying earlier, I think the Regalis and Pantherina, especially heavy, higher doses of those, have lended themselves to the kind of craziest dreams for me. But in general, taking almost about any amount of Amanita before bedtime has a pretty significant impact on the. It's not every night, you know what I'm saying, that I take Amanita. I have crazy, vivid dreams, but it's pretty often, and whenever it
Yeah.
happens, it's yeah, like I took some Amanita before bed. Another interesting aspect, nuance to this whole discussion of Amanita muscaria versus Amanita regalis. Earlier on in the conversation, I was describing this ability that people have, very common practice within the Amanita community, of decarbing and customizing their experience, making these decarboxylated teas and things like that. This is a matter of you're playing with the chemical composition of the mushroom with like heat and like pH and things like that. You know what I'm saying? And while there is these three main constituents that we can see the effects of, say, the heat and the pH change on them, and can measure ibotenic acid turning into muscimol, there's such a long list of other compounds within these mushrooms that we don't fully understand
Yeah.
yet. They're similar to something like psilocybin, and not all of them are going to be affected by heat and change. So when you add in the complexity of decarboxyling, these mushrooms, it just further adds this sort of randomness of the overall end product that you're getting. And so that's why it's really like, we love throwing the information at them. We love doing the best we can to distill that and to be authentic and transparent. But really what it ultimately comes down to is people trying it for themselves and finding what works for them.
Yeah. Did you want to touch on Pantherina a bit?
Yeah. Amanita Pantherina. I think I was mentioning earlier, some people call it Panthers. And stealthy. I like that name too, by the way. Pantherina. That's one of the coolest names. But yeah, similar to Regalis, all of these mushrooms, Amanita Muscaria, Amanita Pantherina, there's this large overlapping of where they grow naturally within the wild in terms of like their region. Amanita Muscaria seems to have the largest sweeping sort of variability to it. It seems to grow in both warm and cold climates almost all across the world, with some like hot spots of where it seems to favor and grow the most abundantly and things like that, like places like Eastern Europe. There's a lot of overlapping there, but Pantherina seems to slightly favor slightly warmer climates than Muscaria, and then Regalis seems to favor slightly colder climates than Muscaria. So that's just like a bit on like the distribution of these things and stuff like that. But Pantherina also has this somewhat yellowish, sometimes tan cap to it. It is scarily potent. I say scarily, it's respectfully potent. You got to respect it, not fear it. But people say anecdotally that it's somewhere around 4 to 5 times stronger than Amanita Muscaria. I would totally agree with it. It's somewhere around there. It's significantly more potent. It has much higher concentrations of both muscimol and ibotenic acid. It has slightly more than Regalis, so it's even more potent than Regalis as well too. That, and once again, like, I hate to get into the world of just, well, this is what I feel from it. But sometimes is all you can do with these things is pull together anecdotal data and point at certain materialistic qualities to it that you can't explain, right? But Pantherina does seem to be very sedative, heavily sedative. I would say, yeah, Pantherina is probably the most sedative of the three to me. And I've seen other people kind of beckon that they prefer it the most for sleep, or that has the kind of like most like kind of dream enhancing effects to it. Pantherina does seem to be the sort of most sedating. And then there's some interesting alkaloids within it, things like pantheric acid and stuff like that that they're uncovering are unique to Pantherina in particular, but once again, we don't really know exactly what it does yet. So yeah, Amanita Pantherina. People love the Pantherina. It's something we found as well too. It's interesting because we watch this from an analytical viewpoint sometimes, and you can, depending on what kind of tracking and different tools you have implemented, sometimes you can go through and view people's customer journeys and things like that in a pretty intimate
like with
way.
pixels and stuff.
Yeah, and there's a lot of layers to that. But something that we've seen is typically once people have found their Amanita, they're pretty loyal to it. Like, they're a Panther guy, or like they're a Muscaria person. But there is people who cross-pollinate and like the whole bunch and stuff. But like there's a lot of customers who like, they're just like, when's the Pantherina coming back?
Fiendin'. Great.
Yeah, so Panthers are cool. That's what I'm going to want you to try next. I'm sending you some Panthers to try.
Yeah, I'm definitely down to try the Panthers next. Maybe with a friend this time, though, because I don't know if I can do the alone first experience, like glitching in and out of reality just by myself. Because I tell people on my channel, I'm like, do not journey alone. There's so much taxpayer dollars wasted on folks who decide to journey alone and give themselves traumatic experiences, never journey again.
Right.
I would not choose to have my first time with the medicine alone. And I think these could even apply to this. With the Amanita Muscaria, I feel like very safe in that. I'll pop a cap or two at home alone. I'm completely fine. With these other experiences, hide my phone so I don't call 911, literally.
And I will emphasize, I agree absolutely with what you just said, especially higher doses. So I'll tell a quick story real quick. The highest dose Amanita experience that I've ever had, it was a 20-gram tea that I took, and it was a mixture of both Regalis and Pantherina.
Oh my goodness. Wait, 20 grams?
20 grams. And I would say roughly that 20-gram total was probably somewhere around 2/3 Regalis, maybe about 1/3 Pantherina. But it was a very high dose. I ended up taking, if I had to guess, maybe 15, 16, 17 grams worth of this tea because I had the gulp left of it whenever I ended up waking up later. So I didn't down all of it, but it was most of the 20 grams that I took. So I took a really large dose. I don't recommend this. It was in my early days with Amanita, and I had some higher dose experiences, but I really wanted to see how far I could push the bounds.
Because if you take that much of psilocybin, a traditional magic mushroom, it's still a heroic dose. That's a lot even for a more traditional called magic mushroom.
Well,
Holy
and you
moly.
think if Regalis is 2 to 3 times as potent and Pantherina is 4 to 5 times as potent, I was having somewhere like between 50, 60, 70 grams worth of Muscaria, like within this dose. Like it was a really high dose. And mind you, I had several months of Amanita experience before that, not like everyday usage or anything like that, but pretty consistently, like at least a couple times a week, once a week or something like that. And so I would say I had somewhat of like experience and simultaneously probably some like an actual like tolerance as well too. But also Amanita tolerance is so weird. I don't know if I really had much tolerance at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, I took this really large dose and I had this experience where it was one of the most potent psychoactive experiences of my entire life. This thing that you've said multiple times about your Regalis experience of glitching out. Yeah, like I was in multiple places at one time. At one point I actually urinated on my kitchen floor, and in the process of urinating on my kitchen floor, like it truly in my mind felt like I was doing something really important.
Yeah. Saving the world.
I was saving the fucking world, Emily, but I was pissing on my kitchen floor, and it made so much sense in the moment. This was the state.
Were you alone?
I was alone. Yes,
Okay.
I was alone. Completely
Still a
alone.
safe space
Yes.
to pee on the floor.
Well, and like I had a really crazy experience on my couch. I ended up falling asleep, and when I woke up 9 hours later, I had somewhat hurt myself. I had bruises on both of my knees. I wasn't like hurt bad, but shit was like in my apartment had been like shit on the table had been like thrown off, scattered across the floor.
Yeah.
My knees were both hurting.
You're like left unattended.
And so really large doses of Amanita, sometimes people can get into this somewhat comatose type state where they can also like walk around and shit. And so that's what I was doing. So that
But you
is
didn't
part
feel
of
the pain during that. You didn't feel the pain while you were under the effects, only afterwards.
Yeah, afterwards. Yeah, and that is where like certain contexts, trip sitters and facilitators and things like that are important.
Yeah, well, you could be doing something so obviously painful while you're journeying, and it's just not clicking because you might not actually be connected with your body at that moment in time. And somebody could be watching you and be like, oh my gosh, get your elbow like off the stove. Like that's hyperbole, but yeah.
Yeah. And like generally people aren't crazy. It's not like the propaganda that you've heard of people taking PCP, like that completely fake fucking bullshit. No, it's people with Amanita. There is like scary instances like that where you can, like I just said, I wasn't aware of the fact that I was stumbling over things in my apartment, but usually it takes people taking a very large dose and the kind of like this aspect of them wandering around doing stuff. It's not like people are wandering the streets on Amanita. Usually it's like they'll stumble over something in their living room and fall over. And it's like the facilitation aspect of that. And we've sat with multiple people like this. Usually it's like this, oh, hey, buddy, here you go. We're here. Yeah.
But you didn't burn the house down.
I didn't burn the house down, Emily.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. You want to wrap things up?
I think we can wrap things up.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. I want to see the animation, the like HBO, what's that common side effects animation of like you just like in the kitchen and what's hitting the floor just becomes like this kaleidoscopic like work of art. Like, yeah, if you're watching this and you're an animator and you have so much free time, literally animate that part of the podcast, animate that clip. But yes, I know what you mean, that you felt like you're saving the world. You'll get these narratives, you'll get these downloads of, oh, this is what this actually is. And I think something about that is fabulous and incredible. And then other times when it's so far removed from reality, it can be a little scary or a little frightening how convinced you can become.
Right. And you can also be aware, like while you're in it, that it only makes sense because you're in it. If that makes
you want to know something, Gabe? That's what I don't like admitting to myself. That's what I don't like it. I like to sit in the, oh, I figured it all out. I like to have that moment as a little, just a little as a treat.
Right.
Before I snap out of it.
I like to feel into the delusion a little bit.
It's a treat. But yes, thank you so much for having me on your channel. Everybody, if you are not subscribed to this channel, Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals, please be sure to like and subscribe. I am also on YouTube. My user is Chrysanthus. You can get with my realm at Chrysanthus on Instagram and TikTok. If you want to support what I am doing, please check out my Patreon account. And if you are interested in ordering anything from Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals, please be sure to use my code KEEPITTRIPPY for 10% off. You can use it again and again, I know I do, to order my mom that lovely Blue Lotus tea. Gabe has an amazing podcast. Gabe, tell us about it.
Absolutely, yeah. Launchpad Podcast. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple. I am the host, the interviewer, and I have awesome people like Emily on, and we just chew the fat and, have a lot of fun on there as well, too. So the Launchpad Podcast, it's going places. So hop on board.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Hey.
Thank you. Keep
Thank
it trippy.
you. Much love.